Hello, and welcome to She Leads Biotech, the podcast that celebrates women leaders in the bioscience space. I'm your host, Sharron Cox, CEO and Managing Director of CNA International, based right here in New York. And each week I'll be talking to women leaders about their work, their triumphs and challenges, providing invaluable insight into how women can unlock their superpowers and succeed on their own terms. So whether you're navigating your own career path in bioscience or you're passionate about science and innovation, I hope you're empowered and inspired by each episode. My guest today is a seasoned operations professional with extensive experience in people, program and project management. She's got 2 masters, one in biotechnology and the other molecular and cellular biophysics, and also an MBA from Rutgers. So here to talk about ways to break the glass ceiling, please welcome Surabhi Sharma. Surabhi, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing, Sharon?
I'm doing very well indeed. How are you?
Doing good.
It's been an age since we spoke.
I know, it's been a long time. Where have you been hibernating?
Yeah, still here, good old Long Island. Hibernating way. I've been keeping a track on you though, so I know how busy you've been, and I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today.
My pleasure.
On the podcast. The one where I want to start is, and this fascinates me with everybody I've spoken to, how did you start in the biospace? Was this something that you'd always wanted to do, or was it something that happened? Did it choose you, or did you choose it? Tell me how it started.
So it was a marriage made in heaven, I guess. How did I come to it? So actually, it chose me in the sense that initially it danced around in my sight like a peacock. And then finally, when I chose it, then it was all my decision. So how did it come about? I wanted to be an Air Force pilot.
Okay.
After my bachelor's. My parents didn't like that idea. I was in India at that time. There was no possibility of becoming a fighter aircraft pilot at that time in India, in its Air Force. So I went for that exam. They offered me something which was not even close to what I wanted. And I came back and I decided I would do my master's. So this was bachelor's in science. Right after that, I had gone for my pilot testing. Came back, wasn't thrilled about it, decided to pursue master's. My initial thought was MBA, but most of the exam deadlines had already passed. So now that I was there, I had only 2 options. Either I could wait 1 year and then apply for the next year's MBA exams, or take up something in science, because the Masters of Science deadlines were still not done. So my dad decided that he was going to push me into science, and I decided, hey, why to waste 1 year? Let me try to see if I can learn something in science and keep on learning. So very reluctantly, I went into Masters for Science exam, and I got it. It was one of the premier institutes in India, Indian Institute of Technology.
Yeah.
It's like the MIT or the Oxford, and I couldn't believe it that I had it in me to appear for an exam and compete with thousands of people and get it. So I got it, and again in my mind I was thinking I'll do this just for 1 year, although it was a 2-year course, Masters in Science. I'll only do it for 1 year, and then the very first opportunity I will jump into MBA.
Right.
1 year passed, summer internships came by. I went for a summer internship, and at the same time, I was also applying for MBA. And the internship changed everything for me. I got into one of the premier labs, environmental research labs in India, and I really got to see how science is done. It's very different when you have the theoretical knowledge, and versus when you actually do it. How to form a hypothesis, how to set up experiments. These were all lab experiments, very wet lab. And that changed everything. I came back a changed person after 3 months of summer internship, And I told my dad, I don't want to do an MBA. I would stick in science. And he was the happiest person.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet he was. So you became a scientist for a while? Did you do
Correct.
the bench work kind of thing?
Correct. So I started in environmental sciences with that summer internship, then came back, finished my second year of Masters in Science, and then stayed at IIT, the Indian Institute of Technology, to pursue scientific research. And it was all bench work. I
Right.
decided out of the different things that I could have gone into, uh, the most interesting at that time for me was structural biology. So I decided to pursue that. I wasn't even thinking initially that I would do a PhD, but the idea was there after master's. If you want to pursue science, you want to do PhD. So I decided I would, continue in the wet lab in structural biology, see how molecules interact, how you can make a drug more efficacious with less side effects. Everything in petri dishes, on computers, how does it look, and how you can make really good medicines for the world. And that's how it started.
Wow. And then you went into big pharma. You did your stint in
So
industry in big pharma, right? And before transitioning into to the smaller areas.
yeah,
I'm interested to know the difference, how you felt at that time as a woman going into this sector, which is very male dominated. I imagine even more so back then. What was it like for you? Your training and everything within these big pharma companies.
yeah. Before I went to big pharma, I worked in the academic settings in India.
Yep.
Then I came to US for pursuing master's come PhD, stuck around for the next few years in structural biology, and that the curiosity got the better of me, and I started asking what happens once we make this drug so good. Can we give it to the patients directly? And I was told no, you have to test it in animals. So again, at University of Michigan, I pursued what is called preclinical research, which is testing of drugs on animal models. That is more male dominated than even coming to pharma.
Right.
So to get my foot there and to prove my mettle there was very difficult, but I did that for a few years. I had a couple of papers within those 2 or 3 years that I worked there, in peer-reviewed journal, in very high factor, impact factor journals. And then the same curiosity got me into clinical research. And I started asking the same question. Can we give it to the patients now that we have tested the drugs on animal models? And I was told, no, you can't just go to the patients directly.
Come on, it worked on this mouse. Let's
Yeah,
lift your arm. Let's go.
exactly. So I was an impatient one, I guess. So my supervisor at that time introduced me to clinical research and said, well, after animals, it needs to be tested in human beings before it goes out in the general public. So that piqued my interest and I started learning more about clinical research. Again, a very male dominated, area at that time, especially because in clinical research was in its nascent phase at that time, even in US.
Wow.
Yeah, so I went to work for institutes like University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey, and then at Mount Sinai hospitals in New York City. I was working initially as a volunteer because it's difficult to get your foot through the door, even though you might have great credentials, but it's always the catch 22. When
Yep.
you want to start in a new field, in a new area, you would think it's all science, and I had credentials in science, and how difficult can it be to go from one stream of science to the other stream of science? But it was very difficult. Without experience, I couldn't get a job. So I kept on, working as a volunteer for a few years. And then finally, I had enough credentials to say, well, now I understand clinical research. And
Right.
people started taking me seriously. So I worked at Mount Sinai for a few years and then moved into pharma. I was thinking pharma would be very difficult and, very male dominated. Yes, it is. At the top levels, it is very male dominated. but at entry levels, it is not.
Mm.
And actually, there has been a lot of papers and research in this area that in healthcare and pharma, at the entry levels until mid management level, it is women dominated.
Yep.
Becomes more and more difficult to go from mid management to top management. That's where the issue comes. So, in any case, I got into pharma, not knowing what I was getting into. My academic colleagues kept on telling me, you're going to the dark side. It's the dark side.
Right.
Come back. And I was like, try the dark side. So that's what I did. I went into big pharma, quickly made my way to the mid management level. I also had direct reports at that time, but this was all clinical research. I was managing clinical operations. Then I went into project management in clinical trials. And finally, after completing my MBA, so in all this mix,
So you went and got the MBA anyway?
Yes, I got the MBA finally. Because coming to pharma was difficult, but breaking through that glass ceiling was even more difficult. As I said, you can reach up to mid management level, but that's where most women, most ladies start feeling that glass ceiling. And I kept on feeling it like there's no way I can go any further, especially because I'm not an MD, I'm not a physician, right?
Yep.
Physicians might have an easier way because that's a different track within pharma. But also, I didn't have a PhD. I did not complete my PhD. I had 2 masters, but I didn't have PhD.
Right.
So the only other way for me to keep going vertically up, if I wanted, was to get into management.
Yep.
And to prove my management capabilities, I had to get another degree.
Yep.
So yes, eventually I went into MBA. 10 years after I thought I was going into MBA, I made it into Rutgers Executive MBA program. Did that in 1.5 years. And that opened a lot of other avenues for me.
Right.
I wanted to stay close to clinical research, close to science, but I also had a knack for management. And that was the only way up through the glass ceiling for me. So MBA helped in that respect. And it opened a lot of doors. I kept on climbing the ladder, as the proverbial ladder, as they say.
Yep. Let's just keep going, keep climbing. So talk to me about your management style and some of the teams that you've managed, because the thing about the biospace, particularly with clinical trials, it can be very got to make this happen now. We've got 15,000 things all going on. We've got to have that. Can be quite stressful, I think, probably to say the least. What's your style of working through that with your teams of people?
Yes, it's a very high-paced, fast-paced industry.
Yep.
Very high anxiety industry, because at the end of the day, you are working to make someone's life better, to get a medicine approved as quickly as possible for all the patients that are eagerly waiting for it. So safety is paramount, but time is also very important.
Yep.
And, it comes with a lot of anxiety because everyone thinks they have the highest priority and everyone wants you to do their stuff first. And especially when you are running global trials across the whole world in 20, 30, 50 countries, hundreds of sites, thousands of people who are working in this phase 2, phase 3 clinical trial, it becomes, very difficult to manage teams very quickly.
Yep.
To keep the consistency, to keep everyone at the same pace, at the same level. And, people have lives outside work also. So you have to take that into account also.
Yeah.
So your question is very interesting. What is my management style? Humane? If I can sum it up in one question, in one word, I like to keep it human because, yes, we are working towards the betterment of science, the betterment of patients, but we also have to think about our own people who are working tirelessly in research to bring these medicines out as quickly as possible.
Yep.
No one wants to do a bad job. Everyone wants to do their best.
Yep.
Everyone understands how quickly we need to do this, right? But we also have to understand that everyone is human. There will be errors, there will be delays, there will be times when people will have to take off because they have to care for their family. So you can't imagine that it's going to be 100% perfect all the time. There's nothing called perfect in this world. So what I like to do is always have an open door policy, however cliche it might sound. Tell me what is going on outside work in your life.
Okay.
If I know what is going on, what is bothering you, and if I can help you figure out or point you in the right direction to figure it out, then we can nip it in the bud. If we can't nip it in the bud, then the second strategy that I always like is have a very solid succession plan. People fall sick, there will be emergencies, there will also be some things that need to be done urgently. What happens if someone is out because they're sick? There
Yep.
has to be a clear cross training and succession plan for every person, not just a manager. So one of the things that people think is succession plan is for management, right? Top management, they need to have a succession plan. I think different. I
Everyone.
think
Yep.
everyone needs to have a succession.
Yep.
You need to be in a space where someone knows what you're doing. They might not know all the details, but they should be able to pick it if you're not able to show up for work due to an emergency. So
Right.
those are the two things that I like in my leadership style: to be human, to understand what's going on, try to fix things or help them fix things as quickly as possible outside work. And then if they're not fixable, they're not fixable, but at least have the second thing. This is the succession.
Okay. And what about mentoring? What sort of mentors did you have as you were coming up through the various ranks, so to speak, that had an impact in your style now?
So I have had many mentors on and off. When I was trying to make that transition to science, I had mentors, very good scientists who showed me how science is done. That brought me into science. When I made the transition into preclinical, I had very good mentors that showed me, you can't just go to the patients, you have to test it in preclinical, and this is how it's done in animal models.
Yeah.
And then again, every transition, I have sought mentors. So the next transition that I did was into clinical research. And again, I had very strong mentors who were already working in the field. And I've never held back on asking,
Right.
how did you get there? What did you do? What am I missing? Is there something I can do differently? These are the type of questions as a mentee I'm always asking. I'm never shy to ask these questions. Because my philosophy is, at the end of the day, a person can just not answer. But
What's the worst that
exactly, there's no harm in asking. If you don't ask, you never get anything. But if
Yep.
you ask, there's a 50% chance you might
Yep.
get. So that's why I have always sought mentors whenever I need help. Even till today, I have a career coach. On and off, I do contact her.
Yep.
I ask her many a times, am I doing this correctly? Is this the right way to go about it? Can you check my resume and look and see if it makes sense to you? Am I putting the right stuff inside?
Yep.
Can you be my sounding board? Let me talk to you. And before an interview, I want to talk to you and tell you what I feel. Is it coming through?
Yep.
I also have mentors to wherever I want to be next. So if I want to go to XYZ company or XYZ industry, or I want to,
Next level.
the next level, I always seek people who have been there. I want to know their journey and learn from.
And is that a mixture of men and women mentors that you have?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have to tell you that I've never been shy to ask men also.
Yep.
And some of the men, started mentoring me very early on, and they're still my mentors.
Yep.
I still contact. And similarly, women.
Yep.
And also, there is this misconception that, your mentors should be older than you. That ageism, I never believed in that. Some of my mentors are younger than me, much younger than me.
Interesting.
I believe you can learn from anyone, anywhere, anytime.
Yeah.
So if a mentor is 20 years old, when I'm 60 years old, I'm not 60, but if I can
When
learn
you will be.
from, why not?
Yeah. Well, different people can bring different parts to a
Yes.
whole, right? It's not like you're asking somebody to go through that's going to be for your entire career. There might be one area that they particularly
Yeah.
shine at
Mm-hmm.
that can be useful to you. It
Exactly.
was interesting when you said about having a coach, because so few, I don't know if it's people in general, but certainly my experience of people in business are always more reluctant to feel that they need it's like, if I need a coach, it's because I'm failing at something or I'm not good at something. And yet, the best tennis players in the world, the best singers in the world, the best actors in the world, all still have coaches that they get various things from. So I think that is something that is well worth letting people know, the benefits of having a good coach on your side. It's a bit like having a good therapist, right?
Absolutely. So very early on in my life, I learned the benefits of coach. Just as you said, in every field, if anyone wants to excel, they need to have a coach. A coach might not have done it all, but can point you in the right direction.
Yep.
A mentor is different from a coach.
Yep.
A mentor is different from an advocate and a coach. So I always have a few mentors, but I also have a couple of coaches.
Yep.
And, this misconception in science has been there for too long. I think in every other field, people seek out coaches, but in career, especially in science, there's hardly any coaching. It's mostly touch and feel by failing and then learning. And I don't understand why people have this ego that I cannot go and ask for help from a coach. I myself am a career coach. I've been doing this for 25 years. Recently, about 2 years ago, I also became a financial coach. So not only am I coaching people, but at the same time, I also have my coaches. Even the coaches need coaches.
Yep.
And it's always good to have, someone take a step back and look at the big picture, because you might be in the weeds. You want to get to the next level. You want to get to the next industry. You're thinking, in a myopic view. You have a view, but you have a myopic view. You need someone who can look at the whole playing field, right? That
Yep.
is why we have coaches in tennis, we have coaches in baseball, because they can look at the whole field, they can look at the history, they can look at every one of your competitors and can see what is their style, where you fit in, what you can learn from how they have played, or how you can beat them, because every player has a little bit of a weakness also, right?
Yeah.
So those are all important things that a coach can look at. When you are yourself in the weeds, you don't have the capacity to take a step outside and look at the bigger picture.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like a mindset, isn't it? It's changing, just a general tweak of a mindset that can change your whole game
Yeah,
for you.
exactly.
And I often wonder whether or not it's people that think they are all, I'm very clever, I have all of these degrees, I have all of this thing. I should be able to figure it out. I shouldn't need to go to a coach. But to me, I think a coach is probably even more valuable than a therapist, because you can keep moving forward, but they're probably a little bit of a combination of the two, I guess, somewhere along the line.
The head, you hit the nail right on the head. The more the educated, the more the experienced person is, the more ego, as I was saying
Yep.
earlier, the more ego creeps in. They think that I should be able to do this myself. Now I don't need anyone to coach me, to help me, to point me in the right. That's not true. Generally, throughout your life, you should be learning. If you have that mindset,
Yep.
and if you are ready to, ask people, what am I doing wrong? And even if you're not doing anything wrong, maybe they can see the big picture and tell you, this is the puzzle and you are not the right piece at the right time, you
Yeah.
need to go to the other side because that's where you.
Yeah. And what can I do differently? Not what can
Yes.
I do better or what am I doing wrong,
Yeah.
but more how can I maybe just change lane
Yeah.
and what will happen from that? I know through my own career, I've had some amazing breakthroughs through that very process of looking at something in that. Yes, you know how to do the job. I've done my job, I've done for 45 years. There's very little about it that I don't know the nuts and bolts on how to do. But that doesn't mean to say that there are times when I don't know what I'm doing. And it's, that to actually be able to step outside of that, step back, and have somebody else put some perspective in there with just some thought processes. I highly, highly recommend the whole coaching aspect. So,
Think, right? As you
yep,
said, working in that field for 45 years, you know almost everything. But remember, there are exogenous factors.
yep.
World is
Like when the
changing.
whole industry crashes.
Yes. World is changing very fast. Technology is changing. Whatever tools you are using, those are changing.
Yep,
So sometimes we get caught up in, this is how it is done and it has always been done. And
yep,
I know everything about it.
yep,
But then extraneous shocks will come in and change the whole thing.
yep.
Are you going to be a dinosaur at that time?
Rawr. I'll do my best not to be. I'll do my best. I am a big advocate of coaches. I've had several certainly since I've been here in the US to help me adapt to the difference in styles of people here. So I'm a big advocate of coaches. So what are you doing at the moment? What are you involved in right now?
So I came back after working 15 years in pharma and biotech companies. I touched most of the big pharma and a lot of small biotechs. I decided to come back to healthcare.
Okay.
So I'm currently working at John Thayer Cancer Center, which is a part of Hackensack Meridian Health System in New Jersey.
Yep.
It's a large hospital system, 18 hospitals strong and still growing. And I'm heading their regulatory department in clinical research. Again, that was not my not my choice. It chose me.
Yep.
I didn't even think
Sometimes these things do.
yes, I didn't think that I had any significant experience in regulatory. I mean, in clinical research, I have done regulatory here and there. But I wouldn't say that was my expertise. As I alluded earlier, my expertise was clinical operations,
Yep.
project management, and then once I got into the top management, I was more of program management. But then I decided to take this job when I was approached because that's a new thing to learn. And the way it was presented to me was, yes, you might not know everything about regulatory, but if you can learn everything that you learned over the years, you can definitely learn things. So, what they were really looking for is someone to lead the management team to build a very strong regulatory team
Right.
for their expansion of oncology research in all of their 18 hospitals. Right now, oncology is only at one center at John Thayer Cancer Center in Hackensack, and they now want to expand that clinical research in oncology throughout the 18 hospitals. So that would require a lot of paperwork, regulatory approvals, and all of that. Also, because I had worked in pharma, I can use those collaborations to bring in more clinical trials
Yep.
from different pharma companies into this expanding network.
Fantastic. And what's the end goal with that? What do you hope to see in the next, I don't know the timeline, 2 years, 5 years, but what would you like to see happen that you would come away and go, check that box, I did a great job with that?
Definitely, I would like to build a very strong regulatory team that knows what they're doing.
Yep.
They can stand up to any questions from regulatory agencies or sponsors, pharma sponsors, biotech sponsors. I want the expansion to be fully supported by the regulatory team. As I call it, I'm trying to rebrand regulatory here. As I
Okay.
call it, regulatory is the backbone of any clinical research organization.
Yep.
You don't get to see it very often. They're always locked up in their offices, right? But without getting all the approvals, without getting all the regulatory stuff done, you cannot even initiate a clinical trial.
Yep.
And similarly, you cannot run a clinical trial if your regulatory team is not strong. So yes, there's not a lot of visibility for regulatory, but without the backbone, you will not be able to run your clinical research organization. So my future goal in the next 2 to 5 years is to build a strong regulatory team across the 18 hospitals so that, it is a seamless clinical research operations throughout the network.
And does that mean that you'll be looking to bring the trials into the hospitals and they'll be done almost in-house trials within the hospitals?
So right now, even at one center that is doing oncology research in the whole network, HMH network as it's called, there are 400 plus active clinical trials.
Wow.
Yeah. So
obviously at various stages.
At various stages, yes.
Right.
Some are phase 1, some are phase 2, 3, 4. Some are just initiating and some are closing and some are, enrolling patients. So yes, about 400 plus clinical trials active at any given point of time.
Wow.
So now you can imagine this is only one center. If we expand it to 18, you can imagine the amount of clinical trials.
Yeah.
The sponsors, the pharma sponsors, the biotech sponsors, who have already placed so much trust in this organization, they are eager to expand. They are eager to give us more and more clinical trials. We have the limitation that we do not have a team to support all and more. So that's the whole idea, to build a whole team that can support thousands of clinical trials. Any pharma company, any biotech company wants to come and work with us, place a clinical trial with us, we should be able to say yes.
Okay. So is that from a staffing perspective, that you need CTMs and CRAs and things to be there to do those trials?
Correct.
Okay.
We always have staffing issues, not just at the regulatory team level that I'm heading, but also the clinical team. So the research nurses, the sub-investigators, the clinical research coordinators, the data management, every area is going to need that same expansion.
Maybe we need to have a conversation off air then.
Absolutely.
So what for you personally, you've come on such a journey, you've been so involved in all aspects. I'm absolutely thrilled that you didn't stay on the bench, because I just imagine that you would have been, because that's always so slow, isn't it? Looking to try and find a cure by sitting at the bench. And I think from what I know of you'd have been like, okay, who do I inject with this now? Let's just give this a trial. Let's see what happens. You've come such a long way and done, and I know from knowing your style and how passionate you are about the things that you do. If you had a piece of advice for somebody who is choosing bio, or it's chosen them and they're looking for their future, what would you say to somebody who's a female looking to develop in the space?
Yeah, absolutely. Some time ago, I was invited for a sort of a local TED talk, and it was the same question that you asked. What would be one quality that would take a woman who's just starting in STEM professions all the way to the top manager? And I chose to speak about perseverance.
Yeah.
Persistent and perseverance. Very
Why?
important.
Explain that to me.
You can be the topmost scientist. You can have all the theoretical knowledge, all the practical knowledge, but life will still throw you in the ditches. If you don't know how to, dust off that dust and come out of the ditch and start again from scratch. A lot of people go into depression. A lot of people think that it's the end of their career. It's not. Careers are not they're not straight going up curves. They go up and down, and they go sometimes vertical and sometimes, horizontal. So you have to take, you have to keep learning and you have to take a path that works for you. Just because you had a little bit of a setback, whether it was a personal setback at home you had that was impacting your work, or you had a professional setback, the company went bankrupt, you had a personality clash. There are many, many things that will happen in your career. On an average, all of us work for about 40 years. In 40 years, you cannot expect to constantly go up.
Yep.
There will be times.
Twizzle around sometimes.
There will be times all over the place that you'll be shocked. So I always say perseverance. Just think of it as a small blip in a big journey, and that's okay.
But having that ability to do it, I think, is
Exactly.
key. And knowing yourself, knowing that you have that ability to get back up when you get knocked down, and that dovetails into failure as well, doesn't that word failure? That people are so afraid of,
Exactly.
I can't fail, I mustn't fail. Well, how are you ever going to succeed if you don't know what failure feels like? Because
Exactly. So failures are the stepping stone to success.
Yeah.
If you keep on getting successes and successes all your life, you're not learning it. Believe me, you're not learning it.
And you don't really know if you're succeeding, are you? Because you could just be coasting. If that's somebody's vision of success, then great, but it's very limited.
Exactly.
I think you have to experience the failure to move forward. And I speak very much personally on that one, coming here and setting up again and starting again from scratch. I'm in a different country with no contacts, there's been some tough times. And very easy to say, do you know what, I'm just going to pack my bag and go back home because, but if it's something that you want, and you want it badly enough, then that's what will push you through, right?
Exactly. So as a career coach, when I have to coach people back to, to bring their self-worth, because people lose their self-worth. They might be the best employee in the company, but hey, the company went bankrupt and they were laid off. Is that their fault? But people take it personally. And they're like, I can't move on. This is such a big failure for me. How am I ever going to get back? No, you can, And the analogy that I always use is, as a baby, you didn't come out walking on your feet. There were a million times when you fell down, you had to brace yourself up, try again. Sometimes your parents or someone came and helped you, but most of the times you had to make that effort yourself.
Yep.
So why did you lose that ability now?
We lose so much as adults, though. I think, children are so resilient to things, and children ask questions and then somewhere we grow out of that childlike area and suddenly it's, well, we're an adult, so we have to know it all. We must be successful. We can't fail. We can't lose. And that's a big shock for people to have to take on because, hey, that's life, We all do that, right?
Second thing is success is so relative. What is success to you might not be success to me, right? So why do we keep measuring ourselves to everyone else's parameter of success?
Yep.
And that's something else that I try to teach and say, well, just because everyone else, all your peers, got into the next level and you were laid off doesn't mean anything. Are they more successful? No, they got lucky that they did not get laid off in that round. But who knows, in the next round, they're going to go. Why are you taking so personally?
Yeah.
Go and get, learn something new, get some new education, get new experience.
Build on it.
Try something new and keep on building on it.
Yeah. Well, listen, Surabhi, thank you so much for giving up your time today to talk to me. I've had such a pleasant conversation. It's so great to talk to you. Hopefully we can, next time I'm over in the Jersey area, maybe we'll get together and enjoy a cocktail or something and shoot the breeze about a little bit more about this topic.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. And thank you for contacting me again. It's been a while.
No problem at all. And enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. She Leads Biotech is brought to you by CNA International USA, a woman-owned boutique search firm based in New York. If you're looking to hire talent for your company or want support in achieving your career goals, please reach out to me at contact@cnaint.com. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And remember, the success of every woman should be an inspiration to another. So don't be afraid to share yours. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.